Now, do you see my BioBeyond presentation now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, very good. Great. Well, so thank you all for joining. This is the second of three of these faculty webinars that are introducing BioBeyond. BioBeyond is the name of the what we call a smart course, which is effectively in this Biology 101 course, the textbook replacement for students, and it's where they'll be doing their coursework and a fair bit of the assessment, as you will have seen already. So I will be presenting this and giving some background and then showing the course itself. Maybe I should even introduce myself. So my name is David Schonstein. I work on this project which is called InSpark. And InSpark is a project that was created first from a grant from the Gates Foundation. And this was a grant that was awarded to produce a series of these smart courses that were specifically designed to create more engaging and motivating science courses. We targeted non-majors science to begin with. And we have a series of these courses in other disciplines. BioBeyond was the first, and it is a partnership between Smart Sparrow, which is the platform that you'll become familiar with. That's so everything is built and delivered on the Smart Sparrow platform, and there is a partnership with Arizona State University that helped us with a lot of the subject matter expertise in developing this course and aligning curriculum and developing great problem-solving activities. And they have a theory of learning design there that I'll explain a little bit more. So today, Madison has done the introductions and welcome and the context of this project and what BioBeyond is. I will go through BioBeyond and show you what the student experience looks like. And then we'll jump into what is called the Quick Start, which is a document like an instructor guide to BioBeyond. Should not be shared with students. And it's a document that you should all have now that explains how to get started, and then how to prepare to teach, which is the next part of the course. So there is, this way of teaching is slightly different. You'll see that it's different probably to what you're used to teaching. We think it's a good experience, and we have some good evaluation data to support that. But it will be different. It will be different for you, and it will be different for your students. So there is a bit of extra prep that might go in to teaching this course. But having said that, there's a lot of the grading, a vast majority of all the grading and assessment is done automatically through the platform, and there's a nice intuitive flow for students. So we hope to save you time in the teaching and delivering of this material in exchange for maybe a little extra kind of prep work to become familiar with this curriculum. It's the same learning objectives you've always taught, just in a slightly different format. And we'll go into that in a second, and then I'll make sure to leave enough time for questions. So a very quick run through of what the goals of BioBeyond were. I explained that InSpark is a project. It's actually a teaching network. It's a group of educators, researchers, subject matter experts, and most importantly, faculty that help us on the ground at over 70 institutions now across the country using these different smart courses. And as part of this community, we're developing different activities and resources, and there is a fair bit of collaboration that goes on, which is why we call it a teaching network. As I said, it was Gates Foundation funded to begin with. There are other funding sources that have now come through, namely from NASA. The partnership with ASU, there's a center there. There's a Center for Education Through Exploration. And at ASU and with this center, they are developing a theory of learning design. And as you see the course for yourself in the student it will become clearer what we mean by education through exploration. So the goals were really to develop a curriculum that is more of a journey for students. So the sequence of learning objectives might be a little different to what you're used to teaching, and this, I think, is probably the most interesting and innovative thing that's actually done in the course, in my opinion. There is a lot of very engaging and interesting interactivity within the course, and visually it's quite a stunning course, but I actually believe that at the curriculum level, that is probably what is most interesting and differentiates this course from others. So the idea was to take this active learning teaching philosophy to scale using digital resources. Doing inquiry-based learning is nothing new. It is a great way to engage your students, and when you're face-to-face with them, it's very, it's easier to engage them in active learning experiences and to take them on inquiry-based questions. And the challenge and the experiment that is BioBeyond is, how do you take that to scale and even do it fully online? So the project's goal is also to, have a low-cost textbook replacement. So this dramatically, even though students won't be paying through the platform or anything like that, this is a resource that is very, very low cost for the students, even though it is included in the package. Our goal is to improve scientific literacy, but also spark curiosity. There is some good research out there to suggest that curiosity is a key component to getting students to open up to different viewpoints and ask good questions. And the course really tries to do both these things, and the curiosity element is critical. And then finally, the education through exploration. Theory of learning design is something that is critical, and you'll see a bit more about that as we move through the course. And Madison, please feel free, if you're getting questions or anything like that, please feel free to stop me, and we can answer questions now or later. More than happy to be interrupted and make this an active learning experience, or at least adaptive.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
quick
I'll
note.
let you know if we have any.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so quick note on what this looks like within IvyLearn. So once you have received your IvyLearn course shell, you will see something that looks like this. And within this setup, amongst other things, is the BioBeyond, what we call learn space for students. And so there is a one-click setup of your BioBeyond class. We call them classes. And so that is a instance of BioBeyond that is going to be copied from a master and is just for your students. And the setup is quite easy. You will go into your modules section, and there will be this BioBeyond link at the very top there. And this is obviously very similar to what the students see, but as an instructor, when you're logged in, clicking on this BioBeyond link, I think you need to click on it once and then click on it again to open in a new tab. Once you've done that, you'll notice there'll be a long period of nothing. So there's no waiting bar, unfortunately, there's nothing that tells you that this is actually working, but be patient, don't do anything. It will take about 30 seconds to create this duplicate, and then you will have this instructor-only view within the course. So if a student had clicked on this, it would just have opened a new tab right away and taken them to the BioBeyond Learn Space, where they start all their lessons and begin work, which I'll show you in a second. But as an instructor, you have this extra menu that students don't see. And so I'm going to explain a little bit of this. If you do see the screen, it means that your duplication of the master was successful and everything is set up, including the student auto enroll and the pass back of grades. So this, if you don't see this after 30 seconds or a minute, then maybe something has gone wrong, and you may need to contact us. But we haven't had any issues so far, I don't think. It looks like this is working just fine. So the View Learn Space button, that is for you to experience exactly what the student sees. So if you would like to go in and see exactly what the student sees, then click the View Learn Space, and that will open a new tab, and you will be able to work through BioBeyond just as a student does. And that's very important for you in order to be able to answer questions and support your students. We highly recommend that you spend a bit of time just navigating the lessons and the learn space as a student, because sometimes, even though students these days are very tech savvy, they do sometimes get stuck and don't know where to click, and have simple questions that you'll be able to help them with. For instructors, the other two buttons here, the number one most important one really will be the View Reports button that's here. And this button is going to take you directly to the Smart Sparrow platform, which, as I said, is what the BioBeyond is built on and how it's delivered. Takes to the instructor side, where from there you can view your student progress, how many lessons the students have done, whether they've started, which students might be falling behind. You can also sync your grades there. So there's a button you press to sync back your grades. And there's also a way to preview lessons within BioBeyond in a special instructor mode, so you can easily move ahead and navigate all the lessons and see what the students will do without having to actually do all the questions. And I'll show you exactly how that works. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into the actual experience as a student. So within IvyLearn, once I click on BioBeyond as a student, or I click View Learn Space as an instructor, this is where I'll land. And BioBeyond is designed to take students on this journey. And there is an open-ended question here: are we alone in the universe? And so along the way, and there is an introductory video here, which I highly recommend to everyone to watch. It frames the whole course, and it frames this question, this narrative that actually plays out throughout the course, of trying to figure out whether we are alone. And to understand, to answer that question, you need to figure out what life actually is. And then you might be able to answer, whether we are alone. And then if we are alone, what does that mean? And the reason this, I think, is an interesting question is that it can be somewhat transdisciplinary in nature, the question of whether we're alone. And that's nice for students to get a transdisciplinary feel, to get a sense of problem solving in the real world, and not have information siloed artificially into disciplines of biology, math, physics, chemistry, because it is looking at a broad question. The other reason that this question is good is that it's open-ended. We don't actually have an answer to this. We don't know if we're alone. And so it's really at the frontier of human knowledge. It's a real science problem that real scientists are working on, and you are more than welcome to bring in the latest NASA announcements and interesting bits and pieces about how we might be working towards answering this question. So it's relevant to students, and that's the whole point. So every step of the way within this course, the students should know why they're learning, and they should be able to see why that information is relevant and how to apply it. So let's see what this looks like. There's a navigation along the bottom of the learn space, and it's broken up into units. So there are 8 units that the students need to move through. And within the learn space, they click and drag in order to move along and see and access the lessons, individual lessons within a unit. So there are a series of lessons that should be done in a sequence, and some units have a project. And I'll show you what a project looks like. Not all of them have a project, but some of them do. And the projects are a very cool aspect of the course because the students are able to then apply what they've learned in the lessons to an interesting project. And the projects are often these very personalized learning assets where each student's projects will be very different and personalized. And it's really where they can apply and contextualize the knowledge. So students obviously will only really ever care about their score. Very, very important to know how they can keep track of their score as they're going. So there are a few really important things to stress here, which are detailed in a student FAQ, but I'm going to run over them just so you know how to respond, because we all know that students sometimes don't read the instructions. So there is a units by unit score here, and this is really the only place the student can track their progress by unit. The grade sync will give an overall score back into IvyLearn, and we'll make that available to students when you do sync that a few times throughout the semester. You may want to sync it once a week or something like that. So that will provide the overall score. But really, for students to track their progress unit by unit, it's the learn space they need to go to view. So that's available here. And they can also view how they're going for each individual lesson. So there's the score here. Currently, I have 0 out of 243 points. And the thing to note here is that there are many, many points. So often when students start, they kind of freak out a little bit if they maybe make a mistake on a particular screen or one activity, and they may lose 5 points, they think, because they didn't read some instructions. My advice to them and to you would be to tell them not to panic. There are lots and lots of points in this course, and there is a continual assessment that is going on in the background, and the students are always told when they're going to be assessed, and there are lots of opportunities to make up extra points, and you are provided with feedback as you move through the different activities, and you don't lose a lot of points, and you get tips and adaptive feedback and hints as you go. And often the vast majority of the points are in projects, and the projects are open, and you can work at them continuously and improve them and do multiple passes at them. So students should not worry too much about losing a couple of points here and there on individual screens, and they usually, once they get into a rhythm within the course, they usually find that easier and understand how assessment is working. So let me show you a couple of other things that are key to the learn space experience and scoring. Students can restart a lesson. So within a lesson, the student's score, current score, is available here at the top right-hand corner. And if the student has completed a lesson, or maybe they're halfway through it and they would just like to restart and get a better grade, they can do that. And they can click here on the restart lesson. And the really important thing to stress is that in every project, in every lesson, you will never lose any points by restarting lessons or restarting projects or anything like that. So the students don't need to worry. They can restart a lesson, and the system will take their best grade. So I'll give you a quick example. If I'm halfway, if I do a lesson and I get 100 out of 200 points, and I think to myself, I'd really like to restart the lesson and do it again, I will click restart. The learn space will say 0 all of a sudden, but you haven't lost your points. So the unit grade and the unit points will still be taking that highest grade that you achieved in the lesson. And let's say I restart the lesson, and then I'm halfway through the lesson, I've already achieved a grade of 150, and then I stop. the system will take the 150, not the 100 from the previous attempt. So the system will always take your best score for any attempt or half attempt of a lesson. And so no points will be lost. And the system will also always pick back up where you left it. So you can close a lesson and come back and your progress will be saved. So that's very important to stress early on with your students. You probably will get questions about grading and scoring. But one other thing I wanted to quickly show that's very important. Everything that I just mentioned is covered in a student FAQ, which is accessible here in every single lesson down the bottom, and there's a help button. Now, again, we know the students are not going to conscientiously read through this all the time, but please, as a first point of contact, please continuously point them to this student FAQ that's available. It is full of really critical information about how to navigate the course, and it's broken out by general, high-level questions about navigating the learn space and how scoring works, but it's also broken out by individual units. So there's specific points and tips and little videos are available there for students, and you will find that 90% of all the student questions, because this has been through many thousands of students already, it's all been answered here for students. So as a resource, this is critical for students. And I would also encourage you as an instructor to have a read through this, all these different pages, just as the students do, just to familiarize yourself with the different units and what are kind of the main issues and tips and tricks and things that students get stuck on at times. Okay, so I'll briefly go through, I won't spend much time on this, but I'll briefly run through some of the curriculum here, just to give you a sense of what students will be doing. And then I'll dive into some of the resources. So there's a biology boot camp that really is a generic science unit. There's nothing actually specific to biology in this unit. It covers scientific thinking and reasoning and tools. And then the students dive into what's called the biodiversity, World Biodiversity Expedition. So here they start in biodiversity. And we like to start them in this unit because it's not as scary as maybe starting with the cell. And so they start with the question of, what is life? And they see that it is very diverse. And they will be jumping around different locations around the world, making scientific observations about different organisms. And then they will build out their own Linnaean classification, which is a project here, the classification project. And that's, so they'll be making observations in this little tool called Beagle at the top right-hand corner of each lesson. And they will be using those observations that they made. So for example, is hairy, has 4 legs. They will then use their observations, and this is why it's specific to each student. They'll use those observations in their classification project. And there's a kind of algorithm that works behind the scenes to score the students based on their classification. And this is even something you could eventually one day do collaboratively, because each student's classification will be different, and it's, students helping students through this is actually a really cool thing to do. Now you'll notice that all these lessons seem locked. So this is written in the FAQ and on the screen, but students might miss it. They'll say everything's locked. I can't do anything on Unit 2, and they'll probably contact you a day before everything's due. It's not all locked. There's one lesson called Sonoran Desert, and that's where they need to start. So they click on this and it's locked. Everything else is locked for a reason, just to push them into this very first lesson. And once they complete that, everything else will unlock and they'll be able to progress throughout the unit. So they need to click and drag this globe and start with the Sonoran Desert. And that's how they work through. We have provided an instructive video about this unit because it is special within the course. So within the instructor guide that you will have received, please scroll all the way down the bottom. There's a video that runs you through the whole student experience and what to look out for and what the students do. Okay, moving along, the students, after doing seeing what that life is very diverse, the question is, how did it get so diverse? So they go to the Galapagos Islands and they look at traits and selective pressure. And there are some really nice simulations in here where they look at two populations of bird finches and they apply selective pressures and they simulate evolution. So this is a great unit. Always gets really good reviews from students, and you should have no problems with this one at all. The fourth unit is a look at deep time or geological time. The penny drop moment here for students should be that for a very long time, life was microbial, very, very small. So that something very small should bind all life. And that's their introduction to the cell. I'll show you very quickly here what one of these more exploration-based activities look like. These are called virtual field trips, and they show a little bit of what we mean by this theory of learning design, where you have an activity where you can move around and explore and do different things on the screen, and but then when it's time to actually answer a question, the system is going to move you or guide you or give you feedback based on your responses. So the idea is active discovery. You can move through and explore things, and there should be a lot of great intrinsic feedback within simulations or virtual field trips or things like that. But then you will get guided feedback based on your responses when you hit next and make a selection. That should tell you, what you need to do. It'll give you tips and hints, and then eventually it'll say, okay, you've reached the maximum number of attempts. Let's move you along. Often it will try and provide you the answer or give you, some feedback that shows you what you were meant to have done on a particular screen. Okay, so that's a virtual field trip, and then they dive into the cell. I'm going to quickly also show one of the more interactive experiences within the course. It's called Into the Animal Cell. This is like a virtual field trip into the cell. It uses some models, developed by a well-known medical digital animator, David Belinsky, who's well known for his Inner Life of the Cell videos that he did for, I think, for Harvard. And here the students are going to dive in to an immersive experience inside the cell, and they have a series of missions and tasks that you need to complete. And it's a short activity; it should only be about half an hour to an hour, but it's really pushing the boundaries of what we are trying to do within a web browser. Here you can see they have a series of missions they're trying to complete, and they have different goals, and they get feedback as they go. For example, the very first is to get down into the cell, and you'll see this. You can move around this model as much as you like, and the idea is that by interacting with the cell and seeing the different processes, you can absorb a lot of information, much more than you may be able to do with reading a textbook or looking at images. As good as they are, we hope that this is an experience that allows students to really see these processes and view the cell like they never have had a chance to, and before moving into the next unit where they'll dive into in a lot more detail to each individual process within the cell and understand it in more detail. And one thing to note, though, this is, in terms of the graphics and the graphics card, it is really going to push an older computer to the limit. So you may have students that if they have a computer that maybe is older than, say, 5 years or something like that, they are going to have some they may have some issues with this particular lesson. So they may need to try it on a more modern computer if their graphics card is struggling with this particular lesson. And there is a video in the student FAQ that kind of gives them an explanation of what they need to do in here if they get lost. But just be aware that you may get some students that are having some issues with actually getting this to run on an older computer. And I'll go into a little bit more detail once we get into the instructor guide of how to get student support and instructor support from our team if you do encounter any problems. So here, for example, I'm going to capture the Peruvate, and then I know what I need to do. The learning would be in making mistakes and getting feedback and navigating to the different parts of the cell and getting all this different feedback and trying to do the wrong thing. But here, if you're successful, you're going to for example, create them, add the Peruvate to create your energy, and then store that, and then you can move on to the next in your map and complete this lesson. You can even go down into the nucleus. I think this is one of the nicer parts of the lesson, address this idea of what DNA actually looks like. I doubt many students know what DNA looks like inside a cell, and they'll go way down into the different processes. So you get the picture. This is into the animal cell into the cell unit. Then, as I mentioned, they will move on to really look at all these processes in detail. So respiration, photosynthesis, genetic blueprints. They'll build their own double-stranded DNA helix here in a nice simulation, replication, and proteins. So that's a big unit. That will take them a lot of time. There's a lot in this particular unit. And then they zoom out. So they zoom right out to the question of, well, what happens if we are alone? What does that mean in terms of global scale ecology? And it's a good question. And if we are alone, it probably means that we should take care of this planet. Maybe it's special. And why does it sustain life? And will it be able to support life indefinitely, or at least for the next 100 years? And in that, they tackle the problem of climate change and the controversial topic of whether, as humans, we should intervene in climate change. And they will work on a series of lessons and then a report where they will write up a plan for curbing CO2 emissions. And this is a report where they write in text. It's the only manually graded part of the course where students will submit a PDF report of their plan. Everything else is graded automatically. This is the one thing that they will that as an instructor you will have to do to grade manually, and I'll run through the grading rubric in a second. So just know that there is a project in here, students work on it, and there's an instructor video in the instructor guide that runs you through this unit in a lot more detail and what to watch out for. Finally, we've got the Mission Beyond unit. This is kind of a look at anatomy and physiology through the lens of getting a human spaceflight mission to Mars. There's a project in here where you have to continuously work on getting your team to Mars. And you look at what prolonged human spaceflight does to the body. And it's through this lens that you learn about anatomy and physiology. So it's also a really great unit. Okay, so this is the instructor guide. A few things to highlight. Please take the time to read through this carefully. It's got some critical information here. One thing to note, there's an email address, support@inspark.education. This is an instructor-only email address provided for you to email our team and get support. And if anything in this document is unclear or you have any questions, please get in contact with us early. We're more than happy to respond and help and provide answers. And if you are encountering questions like technical questions from students, where you've pointed the students to the FAQ, they've tried different things, and they still are unable to find a solution. And also you've contacted Reed Morehouse or Madison. Then you definitely have support from our team. And the easiest is probably there to forward us an email, ideally just with a description of what it is, and maybe if you want the student's email address so we can contact them directly, and we'll take it up with the student and get them along. If you have any screenshots or details, then please include that and forward it on. So that's how student support works. The hope is the student FAQ would cover most of the technical issues. Students are advised to use Google Chrome. So Google Chrome is the supported browser for BioBeyond. You may, if they're having issues, you may want to get them to try Firefox, but definitely please remind students to use Google Chrome. We've run through the setup in IvyLearn, so I won't do that. Won't explain that again, but it's all detailed here. There's a summary of must-read resources, and then some details on how to view the lessons in the instructor mode and where to find different instructor resources. So I'll quickly show you that in a second. This is an explanation of how to view the lessons in that special instructor mode. And then very important on how to get your student grades. So you'll notice here that when you click on that reports button that's here within IvyLearn, that will take you to the Smartsboro platform where you can get your grades. And you'll be clicking on this class summary, and then there'll be a sync button here next to the grades, and that will push the total student grades. So the total points for each student, that'll push it back into IvyTech gradebook. And so you can also download as an Excel spreadsheet the individual student, lesson by lesson scores. If you would like to do it that way and tally it up, that's also available to you. But this grade sync should work just fine. And then, as I said, there are some unit by unit videos for these 3 units that are probably going to require a bit of extra care. Unit 2, Unit 5, and Unit 7. Okay, so that's the instructor guide. If anything is unclear, please let us know. And so very quickly, I'll jump in and show you how to preview a lesson as an instructor. Note that by clicking the reports button, it'll take you to your section. So the section that was created for your students. So you'll probably land on a page that looks like this from within IvyLearn. It'll take you straight into the reports page. To view a lesson as an instructor, you can then click on lessons. If you want to see, how many students have started, and then you click on reports and class summary, and it will give a list of your students and how many lessons they've started and how many lessons they've completed. But to view a lesson as an instructor, you have this long list of all the lessons that are in the Learn space, and you select the lesson you would like, and from the drop-down you click on Preview, and that will open a new tab in this instructor mode, and you'll be able to experience a lesson almost exactly as a student would, but with some few extra features. You have a lesson list here where you can move ahead and go to any particular screen within the lesson. So here's this simulation, for example. You can close this once you're done. Or you can even click on the adaptivity button here, and you can view all the misconceptions that are targeted on an individual screen. You can simulate the correct response by hitting apply actions, and that's kind of like a cheat sheet for you to move on to the next screen and apply the correct answer. But you can also, if you want, simulate an incorrect response. And if you simulate this, you'll see what feedback a student will get for that specific misconception on that screen, if you're interested. So you can close this and then experience these experiences, as a student. So, for example, if I drag nucleotides into here, and I have too many unconnected nucleotides, the system's going to realize, oh, you have unconnected nucleotides, and it will guide you through the activity. So connect them up, okay? So I'll do what the feedback says and I'll connect it and then I'll try and move along. It'll recognize now again what I'm actually doing and try and help me along. So, we didn't read the instructions. You need to connect at least 10. And so in this way, the system will guide you through the problem solving activity. This is a nice simulation. Once you've connected 10, it then flips this single strand DNA, and then the students need to build a double strand of DNA, and the double helix actually forms in front of their eyes as they build the double strand DNA. Okay, so as you're doing this, you may want to visit inspark.education. And again, this is all outlined in the instructor quick start. There are some really critical resources here for instructors to help you. And I'll just guide you through quickly what these are and then open it up to questions. So if you click on the fully online BioBeyond from the InSpark homepage, that will take you to the BioBeyond page, and you'll notice up here there are a set of different menus that you should have a look at just to familiarize yourself with curriculum and how assessment works, and then some specific resources. So this guides you through the AAAS Vision and Change learning objectives, which is the standard that was used for creating this biology course. So they're all the learning objectives and standards are listed here in terms of curriculum, unit by unit. There's also a page here on what we call continuous scoring. So this is exactly how scoring works, similar to what is explained for the students in the student FAQ. And then there's an instructor-only resources page. So this is not available to students. You need an instructor login. Everyone who's teaching has been provided with a login, so you will have received an email already with a temporary password, and you should be able to log in using that password, and then it'll prompt you to change your password, and then you'll be able to access these instructor resources. If that's not working or you can't find that email, you can always click on the Forgot My Password button and it'll resend you a new password. So here, most critical is probably the unit cheat sheet. So this is a document that details every single unit, and lesson by lesson. And as you're reviewing the lessons in that instructor mode, we suggest that you have a read of each individual lesson. It outlines the estimated time spent, the score, what the students will do, maybe some major misconceptions, and the key kind of interactions and simulations that are the students will do within this lesson. So it's a good companion to this instructor mode view of the lessons. Other important resources on the portal are the rubric. So this explains that manual grading and how to manually grade that Blue Planet report in Unit 7. And then feel free to use any other resources that are here that you find useful. So that gets me to the end of what I wanted to show, and I'll pause now and take some questions if there are any.
Thanks, David. I got a couple questions throughout your presentation that I went ahead and answered to the individual person who asked, but I just wanted to kind of summarize those for some of you that were wondering as well. So one of the questions was, how will the Canvas course actually be organized, considering that BioBeyond is organized by units and subunits within the larger ones. So the developer and I came to the conclusion that it would be a lot easier to organize the IvyLearn course to match the BioBeyond course. So you'll notice in your BioBeyond course your Bio 101 course in IvyLearn that your course is organized by each unit in BioBeyond, and then there is an additional module for the midterm and the final. So that's a little bit different than how our courses are usually set up with 16 modules. For those of you that are teaching it over the summer, it'll actually work out pretty well because you can essentially do a unit per week. But that is a change that might be a little different for your students as well. So that might be something at the beginning of the semester that you kind of state, this course is a little different than some of your other courses. So take the time to read through the directions. Reed did a great job of including kind of like an introduction module to help students understand the setup of the course as well. But any other questions, feel free to go ahead and just type those into the question box, and myself or David will be sure to answer those.
Yeah, I did see a good question here, that the introductory video within the Learn Space says there are no exams. There is an introductory video from one of the lead kind of academic on the project, talking about BioBeyond. I appreciate that may be a little confusing for students to hear there are no exams. Like, I guess it's, within that Learn Space, there are no traditional kind of exams. There are obviously the Ivy Tech quizzes that students need to complete. And I think the thing to note there is that the way the course is structured, there are no due dates for the units and lessons right now. So everything is open to allow students to complete the lessons and then go back and review. There's actually a review mode on the lessons. If they complete a lesson, it then says review, and they can go back and they can actually move ahead and jump around and view all the screens if they're studying. And I think the design that Reed had in mind was that the way to kind of move students along is the exams. The exams have deadlines, and so your quizzes and exams, the students are going to need the information, in BioBeyond that they're answering and doing in order to do the exams. So that's how it's been structured to my knowledge.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, David. Kathy, I did see your question. Are all of the Biology 101 courses at Ivy Tech now BioBeyond? That's a great question. So any course that is offered online using the statewide content will use BioBeyond. That being said, if there is an instructor teaching a face-to-face section or teaching a hybrid section and they would also like to use this content, they just need to reach out to their local course builders to make sure that their course is tagged with the appropriate codes to make sure that the fees are added appropriately, because as many of you have probably experienced, if it is not coded correctly, the course does not get loaded. So this course would need to be tagged with OMSF, which is in the OER portion, and then also CAFE, which is included.
I did notice one question here about the due dates. One thing, if you are worried about moving your students along, there is one thing you could potentially do. I do think that the fact that there are due dates on the exams and quizzes will move students along, but you may want to consider telling students that you are going to sync grades on certain dates. That may be a soft sync. I don't know what you think, Madison. It's kind of like a soft deadline because the students can go back and restart lessons, and at the very end you will sync the final grade, but that may move them along.
Sure. And I'm actually going to take screen share from you here, David, so I can show this real quick.
Sure.
But to answer your question about the due dates, so while there are not due dates, saying like you need to have this specific lesson or unit completed by this day, we did pace the course so that students are asked to complete essentially like self-check quizzes throughout each unit. So for example, this is the course, and if you click on the Unit 1 overview, it has some information here. So it will say right here. So once you complete, or well, let's start up here. Okay, so this will be accomplished by going through the first 2 lessons in Unit 1 Biology Bootcamp. The first two lessons are titled Scientific Reasoning and Scientific Tools. Once you complete these two lessons, you will need to take Quiz 1, Scientific Method and Measurements. So this quiz is located within IvyLearn, and you can see that by going to your Module 1. And this quiz does have an associated due date. So this is kind of what is going to help your students pace themselves through these units, because they have to do these little like self-check quizzes, and these have associated due dates. So your students would then need to complete, those first two lessons in that unit in time to make sure that they're meeting this due date. So while there aren't any within BioBeyond, we did kind of think of that throughout the actual course within IvyLearn to make sure that a student isn't just rushing through this at like 9 p.m. on Sunday before something's due, but actually, and you'll see here on this Unit 1 Quiz 1 and Unit 1 Quiz 2, these have different due dates. So we're almost forcing them to follow a certain structure so that they are getting the most out of this user experience. And then there was another question. I've tried to look at the course, however, I'm told that it is not opened yet. So Anthony, to answer that, the actual quote start dates within BioBeyond are not, they haven't started yet because this semester hasn't started. But there is information in the instructor guide about how you can go through as the demo account to kind of view BioBeyond, which David, you might be able to speak to a little bit more than I could.
Right. Every instructor should have received that temporary password in your email, and there are instructions in the so in the email. All you need to do is just you will have like a BioBeyond demo, like welcome to BioBeyond demo in your email. And if you don't, then please just email the support or myself to get access to that. But you should have that email. You should have a temporary password. You should be able to log in. And from there, once you click on classes and go into the BioBeyond demo, then you can access the Learn space and experience the student as a student, and also the instructor view. So you still can get in and do basically everything in the in terms of preparing and viewing the course. And I did notice there was a question here about face-to-face, which is a good question. There are a number of different campuses and instructors that are using this in face-to-face. It's, to my knowledge, it's on the list for face-to-face. So it's a slightly different version and way of teaching BioBeyond, obviously, when you're using it face-to-face. And so we have some really good resources for this. We recently did a webinar with another community college, Central Piedmont Community College, and we have other implementation guides that are specifically for face-to-face. So please email the support or again, my email that was previously shown, and we can provide you. We'd be more than happy to provide you with these resources, and then if you need, jump on a call and run you through it in a bit more detail. So it's a good question for face-to-face.
Yeah, absolutely a great question. And Anthony, my suggestion as well, if there happens to be an instructor that's teaching face-to-face that is just kind of curious about BioBeyond in general, we have one more of these webinars, which is next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. I understand that, the delivery of the course may be a little bit different, but even just to give them some, information on what BioBeyond is, point of contact in David, and then also just giving them the information that's in the quick start guide and the instructor guide, I think would go a long way as well. And all well, not all of these, we'll pick one recording, but these webinars, the recording will be published on the Faculty Resource Center. So even if someone is added to teaching this section late, they can always go back and watch the recording as well, like I said, just to at least get the basic information. And there was another question, how are we to prepare our syllabus and add the proper dates for all the lessons? So as far as the syllabus goes, since this is a statewide online class, the syllabus has already been prepared for you, and that will be a part of your course once it is imported for you. So again, that's assuming that you are teaching, the statewide online course. As far as the proper due dates, When you create your own copy of BioBeyond, your BioBeyond course, the dates will essentially copy from our master course. So the dates in BioBeyond will already be set for you. As far as the dates, like I had showed previously for like the quizzes and the other exams, midterm and final in IvyLearn, we will be sending out a message next week, since that marks the beginning of non-instructional week, with the recommended due dates for those quizzes and exams. And Dean, that kind of answers your question as well. The midterm and final for this course are proctored. Both of them are. All right, so we are kind of ending our time here. So I understand if you need to get to another meeting or log off here. So I just wanted to thank everyone for our time. David and I will still be here to answer some questions as they come through. But thank you again so much. We appreciate your time.